Baylor's got 3 games after the bye week, but the toughest opponent of those 3 may surprise you.
You are Locked On Baylor, your daily podcast on the Baylor Bears. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello there, Bears fans. Welcome to another episode of Locked On Baylor, brought to you by FanDuel, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it is your team every day. And I am your host, Cam Stuart of the Rogue Media Network. Appreciate you guys making it your first listen today and every day. We are still in the midst of a bye week. No longer living off the great win over UCF, but instead looking forward. So of those 3 games remaining, we're going to go over who is Baylor's toughest opponent and why, because really, Bears fans should not overlook any of these teams. And who has been the Bears MVP this season? If you're going to be shocked by who the best team is left on their schedule, you will certainly be shocked at who Baylor's real MVP is. And if Scott Drew had landed this player too, Baylor could have really been a Big 12 contender. All that and more coming up on this episode of Locked On Baylor. And yes, for those of you watching on YouTube, I did have to pause in the middle of that intro. I had like the worst cough of my life. So I'm not crying. I don't have pink eye. I'm not high. I just had like the most unbelievable sequence of coughs in the middle of that intro that I had to pause for. Let's get into the show, shall we? Okay, Baylor, 3 games remaining. You just got to win one. You just got to win one to go bowling. And I'm not going to lie to you guys. I didn't think that on November the 6th of this year, I'd be thinking, hey, please, Bears, fingers crossed, let's just win one more game to go bowling. I would be thinking, wow, Utah, mid-November, this is a humongous game. Winner could be in the Big 12 championship game. That is not the case from Baylor's side of things. So Utah at home, on the road against Arizona, and at home to Houston to close out the regular season schedule. So the question is this: who is Baylor's toughest opponent? Well, I'll say all 3 of them are difficult, are very difficult. And I know that's a cliche answer, but you look at this Baylor team and how up and down they've been this season. There are no more Oklahoma States on the schedule. There's no more Kansas States. There's no more UCFs. Even the weakest of those 3 opponents, clearly the weakest, is Arizona. But that said, this is a team that of their 3 conference losses, 2 of them were 1-score losses to BYU and Houston, 2 of the best teams in the Big 12. Noah Fafita still legit, and they went up to Boulder. They faced an inferior team, and they absolutely throttled them 10 ways to Sunday. Just crushed Colorado in their own stadium. So let's do ourselves a favor here. And let's not take the Arizona Wildcats for granted. Okay, lest we do that. Okay, that's not going to be good news for Baylor if they are to take them lightly. They do have Arizona's got Kansas and then at Cincinnati before that Baylor game. Hopefully, before that Baylor loss, coming from an Arizona perspective, meaning Arizona loses to Baylor. But that is going to be a team that is going to be, again, kind of scratching and clawing for every inch of it. And there is a world where they lose both of those games leading up to Baylor, and all of a sudden they're a talented team that is playing for a bowl game. And that's just not a place that Baylor wants to be at there. Obviously, the answer is Utah is the toughest team they have to face. They just are. Utah, it's not at Rice Eccles, thank God, but that doesn't make it any easier. And Baylor is about to run the risk of starting 0-3 against Utah in this quasi Big 12 era, because the first game they weren't in the Big 12 yet, and the second game was technically not a Big 12 game. So they haven't lost to Utah in a Big 12 game, but they haven't beaten Utah, and that would not be a good deal for yours, mine, our Baylor Bears. Utah, I still think is loaded, man. I was wrong about them at the beginning of the season. I thought they were big hat, no cattle. I didn't think they were going to be able to pull it off with Devin Dampier when push came to shove, and they have. Are they the front runner in the conference? As we know, they're not. but they're 4-2 in the Big 12. They're 7-2 overall. They are right there in the mix with Houston, with Cincinnati. And by the way, they just dog walked Cincinnati a couple weekends ago, or last weekend after Baylor lost to them a couple weekends ago. So Utah in all three phases is a very good football team. They are the toughest game remaining on the schedule. That said, what I am most worried about, my nightmare scenario for this Baylor team, is that they lose to Utah on November the 15th, and then they go to Arizona and they take them lightly and they lose that game too. Because then you'll be sitting at 5-6 going into week 12 and facing what is still a good Houston team. Oh, well, Cam, they're beatable. They just gave up 45 to West Virginia and lost to a bad West Virginia team. I know. But Utah also lost by 24 24 to Texas Tech. And that's a team that Houston played real close. Baylor lost to Cincinnati. Cincinnati was running through everybody. Cincinnati gets blown out by Utah. Tech's a team that lost to Arizona State. That looks bad just about now. There's crazy things that happen in this league, and a crazy thing happened to Houston over the weekend. But if you've been watching this Houston Cougars team all year long, you would know that that is a fluke. That is an anomaly. That is not the team they are. They are a much better team than that. Their defense is not as good statistically as it was last year. But again, like I would say about Arizona, just doubt them at your own risk. Doubt them at your own risk, man. Because Houston wasn't very good 2 years ago when Baylor wasn't very good, and they came into your barn and they took it from you in overtime. So that is a Houston team that knows they probably could have beaten Baylor last year if they had any semblance of a college football offense, which they do have this year. And they know how big a statement victory that would be to go on the road against a desperate Baylor team and win that game. So doubt it at your own risk. But none of these three games are layup wins for Baylor. None of them. And to be honest, I wouldn't be surprised if they're underdogs in all three of them. And that should concern us all. That should. Because again, you want to celebrate the UCF win and say Dave Aranda is safe, or at least poke fun at it in a thumbnail, then look at these last three games. The fact that you are not going to be favored in any of the three, even though two of them are at home, should be a heck of a warning sign for Dave Aranda and company of this is how far we have fallen in this season. This is how underwhelming we have become. But honestly, I can hear an argument for any of these three teams being the toughest game that Baylor has left. I think Utah is far and away the best of their last three opponents. But let me know what you think. Is it Houston? Is it Arizona because they're a better team than we think and it's a game on the road? Let me know in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel because, of course, we're coming at you every weekday on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. So now I've asked you who Baylor's toughest opponent remaining is. Next, I'm going to ask you, who is Baylor's MVP this season? We'll take a short break, think about it, and we'll talk about it after this word from our sponsors on Locked On Baylor. First, today's episode is brought to you by Supply House. You know the one. You've got a project, Supply House is 100% the only way to go. When that opening whistle blows on a new repair, get your crew moving forward with Supply House. Order today and see parts on your doorstep tomorrow. Over 280,000 plumbing, HVAC, and electrical items from the most trusted brands in the business. Their real-time inventory and honest lead times keep you from punting projects, while their industry-leading customer service always has your blind side covered. Need parts fast for that project? Supply House has the next day delivery. Game changer. The Part Finder tools and 3D schematics can save you hours on jobs where every detail matters. So join the free Trademaster program today. Score some serious perks. I'm talking priority shipping, lower prices, even a dedicated support line. Visit supplyhouse.com to sign up for free and use the promo code SH as in Supply House, SH College 5, the number 5, for 5% off your first order. That's supplyhouse.com. Real people, real service. Bye week, 3/4 of the way through the season. We know it hasn't been exactly what Baylor fans thought it was going to be. Okay. Myself, obviously, very much included in that because I know those of you who make it your first listen today and every day know exactly that I was really high on this team coming into the season, and it hasn't necessarily panned out. And there's been injuries, there's been coaching concerns, there's been all kinds of reasons why it hasn't panned out. So now I ask you, 3/4 of the way through the season, who is Baylor's MVP? I would love to have your selections in the comment section below if you're watching on YouTube, or tweeting at us at Locked On Baylor if you're listening wherever you get your podcasts as well. Or listen on podcasts and go to YouTube and give me a view there and drop your comment there. But I asked a couple of my Baylor friends about this. Who would you put as your MVP this season? Some of my friends, some of the people that cover this team, and I got a bunch of different answers. Of course, the one that comes up the most is Sawyer Robertson. And we know at this show, I'm a big Sawyer Robertson fan. I am. What I was looking for in terms of the MVP for a season that has been so inconsistent, I'm looking for someone who has been consistently good throughout the entire season. And sure, Sawyer Robertson has been good. Make no mistake about it. He is still one of the best quarterbacks in the country, even though he's not leading in all the categories like he was a few weeks ago. Okay. He is still one of the best quarterbacks out there. The thing that's crazy about Baylor, though, their offense is so good that they have another guy who's been an absolute monster all season long. He has delivered through every game, and he could be a first-round pick in April. Because for me, the MVP of this Baylor team is Michael Trigg. I mean, you look at the game log and find me a quiet game. Like, here's what's crazy, man. We're talking about a tight end here. That is so tough for those guys to show up week in, week out with how defenses are attacking you. There's some times where the tight end's just not part of the game. They're not part of the passing game, I should say. That is not the case at Baylor. Every week he's doing something. He hasn't been shut out one time this year, which, again, for a tight end is crazy. Like, tight ends get shut out of games. It happens. Good tight ends get shut out of games. It happens all the time, actually. He has been a beast throughout the whole season. That Kansas State game, he had 155 yards. He had 99 against Auburn. He's sitting there with a career high, 600 yards, career high in catches. Dude's played at a couple of big-time places. He was a big-time recruit. It's coming to fruition in year 4 and at school number 3 at Baylor. That's crazy. I'm going to play what Dave Aranda had to say about it, specifically after the game on Saturday, so it's in reference to that UCF game. But there's a line in there that I really love about Michael Trigg.
It was really good to see Trigg from the start kind of attack the thing, and not kind of have get him going in the third quarter, but to get him going right off the bat, I think that's a chore for a defense to have to contend with. Is 4 quarters of Michael Trigg.
That is a chore for a defense to have to deal with. 4 quarters of Michael Trigg. It reminds me of like Nolan Richardson, 40 minutes of hell. Like, that's what it is when you're guarding Michael Trigg. I mean, we've already established he is a mismatch nightmare. But for an offense that is this potent, again, like those of you, I mean, most of you who listen watch football fairly regularly. That's why you're listening. So I don't need to explain it to you like you're 5. But it's crazy how an offense this potent and a pass game this good essentially runs through a tight end. That never happens outside of a couple of 2010s New England Patriots teams and a little bit with Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce recently. Like, high octane offenses do not run through a tight end, except for this one at Baylor. Michael Trigg just so happens to be the team leader in receiving yards per catch, and tied for the team lead in touchdowns. Like, think about that. He is the team leader in yards per catch. He is their best deep ball threat, essentially. Best big play threat on the offensive side of the ball. And he's a tight end, although you wouldn't really know it because tight ends are not that athletic. They don't make catches like that. The guy ends up on SportsCenter top 10, 3 times this season? Human highlight reel, and he's playing tight end. He hasn't had a bad game all season long. Love Sawyer to death, man, and we wouldn't be anywhere near this situation without Sawyer. He's had a bad game this year. Michael Trigg has not. He has not. It's just crazy how much control he can have over a game from that position. It's just nuts. There's no... we think back to the Art Briles days and those Baylor offenses, which were literally the best in the country for 3-4 years running, or 4 out of 5, whatever it was, top 2, top 1 offenses in America. They had bit part players at tight end. Everyone remembers Laquan McGowan because he's the big guy. How many of the other ones can you name? I'll help you. But how many of you remember Jordan Ivar or Gus Penning? Nothing against these players. Trust me, they were effective players. But my point is, when you have an offense that is top 5, which Baylor's offense still is, top 5 in America, they don't have their best playmaker being the tight end. It just doesn't happen. And now, when you start looking at these kind of way too early, NFL mock draft boards, Kyle McAllister, who is one of the leading insiders on this, has in his first round of the draft, Michael Trigg, tight end, Baylor. You've got to be some kind of special player at that position to be taken in the first round. It's not left tackle. It's not quarterback. It's not wide receiver. It's not corner. So you got to be some kind of special. Michael Trigg is some kind of special, man. He leads the country in receptions per game and yards per game from a tight end. So for me, Michael Trigg is the MVP of this team because I don't know how many times we need to hear about how teams just can't guard him. And when you get him involved in the offense, you become unstoppable. Ask Auburn, ask Kansas State, ask Arizona State when they thought they had that game at the end, the last couple of minutes, and Michael Trigg is reaching over the goal line for a touchdown. He has a big play, 35-yard touchdown in that game, I want to say it was, to get them back in it. Ask any team they played this season, and I'll bet you they'll say the toughest guy to defend or the toughest guy to play against in general was Michael Trigg. And it's a heck of a story, man. It's a heck of a story of a kid who probably needed to find his way a little bit in college football. The stories coming out of USC and Ole Miss were not positive ones about Michael Trigg. Lane Kiffin basically saying, yeah, Trigg kind of walked out on us. And then he goes to Baylor, and it's well, is he going to walk out on us? And if he does walk out on Baylor, it's because he's going to be picked in the first round of the NFL draft. There are all kinds of problems with the Dave Aranda era at Baylor, but I think Michael Trigg's development is going to be one of the great positives. Same with Sawyer Robertson, same with Josh Cameron, same with Keaton Thomas, another guy who is coming off of JUCO waivers, basically. But to develop these guys into legit NFL talents is a nice feather in the cap. I don't think they developed enough guys. I think that's why the record is what the record is during Dave Aranda's tenure. But it is certainly a feather in his cap to see how far along Michael Trigg has come. And by the way, he hasn't been healthy since game 2 of the season. He has been dealing with that shoulder injury every game since then when he left that SMU game early. And yet the production has not dipped. In fact, it's better than it was last year. 3rd leading receiver, leader in receiving yards, leader in yards per catch, and nobody has more touchdowns on the team than Michael Trigg. That is your MVP. He is your MVP. And he's probably your only first-round pick, which, hey, it's been a long time since Baylor's had a first-round pick, not under Dave Aranda. So looking forward to hearing a Baylor name called on night one of the NFL draft again, and Michael Trigg might just be that guy. Let me know who your team MVP is. Let me know in the comment section below or tweet at us at Locked On Baylor. I can certainly hear out Sawyer Robertson. There's a couple other names I can hear out as well. For me, though, crunching the numbers, I'm going Michael Trigg. What say you? Let me know in the comment section below. When we come back, we're going to talk about who could have been the team MVP for Baylor basketball this year. Another coulda, shoulda, woulda, coulda. If Baylor had this player, they might legit be in the conversation for the Big 12 championship, and they were very, very close. Let's talk about how that fell through. Let's do it next on Locked On Baylor. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. You guys know it's the NBA time. We're here. NBA is so here. And there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, right here, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Oh, geez. I'm going to need to... Okay, even if you missed the start of the game or you want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Let me say that again. New customers, $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. So this is going to be an exciting season for Baylor basketball, right? Because we don't know many of these guys. And certainly in game one, Tunde Yesufu stood out. Cam Carr stood out. They look like the leaders, the true engines of this team. And once again, Baylor has a scintillating, super diaper dandy in Tunde Yesufu. But you know what's better than one super scintillating diaper dandy? Two I won't do it again. Two impact freshmen would have been even better. And Baylor was very, very close to having two of them. And the one that they didn't get just so happened to be maybe the breakout star of college basketball night one. They just missed out on Koa Peat. Like, just missed out, man. He ends up going to Arizona within the conference, and it really came down to Baylor and Arizona at the end of it. And look, I'm going to be happy with whatever this team's doing. I'm happy there's a team on the court. But having those two guys, two potential lottery picks playing together would have been elite for Baylor basketball this year. And I had always heard from a source pretty close to this situation that would have pretty good knowledge of this, that the Koa Peat thing came down to money. And the closer they got to Koa Peat's commitment, the more it became apparent that, because he committed like right before the Final Four, that it became apparent that Baylor was going to have to do a lot of legwork in NIL for the offseason to replace their roster. And that with Koa Peat, it came down to, yeah, there's a bit of a question mark as to what this roster is going to be, but really that Arizona could offer more money. And that's disappointing just from a overall sense, right? Because again, and I've said this plenty of times on the show, Baylor basketball doesn't really have a money problem. Baylor athletics doesn't really have a money problem. And trust me, like there are numbers to back this up. Like that's not really an issue at the school right now. And I think the NIL collective actually does a pretty dang bang up good job of getting good salaries out there for specifically the basketball team. But Koa Peat, knowing he's going to be 1 year, knowing Tunde Yesufu's coming in as well, he's going to demand some money just because of how talented he is. Not saying like the kid's going into offices and demanding money, but just because of how good he is. And unfortunately, you couldn't get both. And now I'm wondering how many schools can get two guys like that. You know, Duke can, and schools with endless pockets can. But like, I don't even know if Arizona can. Arizona's a big state school. Baylor apparently can't because this is how it goes. But Koa Peat, man, just took the world by storm, the college basketball world by storm on Monday. They beat the defending champs. Nice win for the Big 12, but of course, a little envious for us that are Baylor fans. Koa Peat goes off for 37 and 5, 30, 7, and 5. and does it on 8 of 12 from the line and 11 of 18 from the floor. So, man, that could have been such an explosive team if you had Koa Peat and Tunde Yesufu and Cam Carr and Rob Wright. But sour grapes. Koa Peat stays home. It was pretty telling that Baylor was up there with Arizona and Arizona State when the kid is from just outside of Phoenix. So it's a tough loss for Baylor in that respect. But I just can't help but thinking what it could have been. Baylor could have been a legit Big 12 championship candidate if they had both those guys on the roster. But I know a lot of people listening don't want to play the what if game, and they also don't want to play the one and done game much anymore. So let's just hope that Cam Carr is good enough to help lead this Baylor Bears team to shock some people, but doesn't quite have the development yet to go to the NBA and has to stay another year. That's certainly my hope. Nothing other than that. We hope you're just good enough, Cam. Hope you're just good enough. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Be sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel. We come at you every weekday. Drop it in the morning on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts as well. Thank you so much for making it your first listen today and every day. We'll see you tomorrow, talking a little bit more about Baylor football's next opponent in Utah. We'll talk about that tomorrow on your favorite show, Locked On Baylor.